everybody if you just want to wait a couple until 10.
Sure. Okay.
Hi, Julie's here.
Jerry or Lisa, let me know when you want us to begin.
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, Chris.
Morning.
So I think we have everybody if you just want to wait a couple until 10.
Sure. Okay.
Hi, Julie's here.
Jerry or Lisa, let me know when you want us to begin.
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, Chris.
Morning.
So I think we have everybody if you just want to wait a couple until 10.
Sure. Okay.
Hi, Julie's here.
Jerry or Lisa, let me know when you want us to begin.
All right, Marty, if you're ready, we can go ahead and get started.
So I think
Great,
we
thank
have
you.
everybody if you just want to wait a couple until 10.
The April 24th, 2020 Oregon State Lottery Commission meeting is now in session. It is noted for the record that commissioners are attending this meeting via telephone and a quorum of
All right, Marty,
commissioners
if
is
you're ready, we
present
can
for
go
today's
ahead and get
meeting.
started.
Today's meeting is being live streamed on the internet and a link is posted on the Oregon Lottery website. April 24th, 2020 Oregon State Lottery Commission meeting is now in session.
Here.
It is noted for the
Commissioner
record
Telfer?
that commissioners are attending this
Here.
meeting via telephone
Commissioner
and a
Valdivia,
quorum of
Marty,
commissioners
if
is
you're ready, we
present
can
for
Commissioner
today's meeting.
Wilcox,
Today's meeting
Here.
is being live streamed
Chair
on the
Saffa?
internet and a link is posted on the Oregon Lottery
April
website.
24th,
Will the clerk also inform the commission of who else is in the meeting?
Commissioner
Is
Patel?
now in session.
Sure.
Here.
It is
Barry
noted for the
Pack,
record that
Carrie
commissioners are
Hemphill,
attending this
Here.
meeting
Taylor
via
Paulson,
telephone.
Commissioner Valdivia,
Cynthia
Cynthia
Burns,
Burns,
Marty, if you're ready,
Chris
we can go
Higgins,
Today's
ahead and get
meeting.
Janelle
started.
Today's
Simmons,
meeting
Here.
is being
Kathy
live streamed on the
Ortega,
internet and a
Kathy
link is posted on the
Stromberg,
Oregon Lottery
Chris
website. Will the clerk
Scaro,
also inform the
Lindsay
commission of who else is
Peterson,
in the meeting?
Commissioner
Is now
Mike
in
Wells,
session.
Here.
Shad
Barry
Barnes,
Pack, that
Spencer
commissioners are
Haley,
attending this
Here.
meeting
Stacy
via
Shaw,
telephone.
and Tina Aaronson.
Present. If you're ready,
Chris
we can go
Higgins,
ahead and get started.
Thank
Janelle
you.
Simmons,
And if there was anybody on the call
Ortega,
that did
Kathy
not hear your name
Stromberg,
introduced, would you please introduce yourself?
Chris
Will the clerk
Scaro,
also inform the
Lindsay
commission of who
Peterson.
else
I think we
is
got
in the
everybody.
meeting?
Mike
Great.
Wells,
And
Shad Barnes,
just
Spencer Haley,
Here.
because my
Stacy
memory
Shaw,
is not as good as I would like it to be, Lisa, I think everybody you identified is, if there was anybody on the call with the that lottery or with did the not state hear your in name some introduced,
role.
would you please introduce
Correct.
yourself?
Yes,
you.
Chris Scaro,
Also inform
Trying to
the
figure out
commission
who's
I
on
think we
the
got everybody.
meeting.
Great.
Wells,
Okay.
And
Shad Barnes,
just
Spencer Haley,
because my
Stacy
memory
Shaw,
is not as good as I
With
would like it to
that,
be, Lisa,
I think
everybody
we will
you
need to,
identified
and
is
if there was anybody
Commissioner
on the
and
call,
with the
I
lottery or with the
apologize. I
state
think we
in
do
some
have
introduced,
a public comment that Elisa, you wanted to read. Is that correct? Trying to figure out
Yes.
who's
I think we
on.
got
Thank you.
everybody.
Great.
Okay.
And,
Chair, Commissioners, Director Pack, for the record, my name is Elisa Zavala,
because my memory
Executive
is not as
Assistant to
good
the
as I would
Director
like
and
it
the
to be,
Commission.
Lisa.
The following
I think
public comment
everybody
was
you
received from
identified
Kitty
is,
Marks, Certified
Commissioner and
Gambling
with the
Recovery
lottery or
Mentor,
with the state.
Certified Gambling Addiction
A
Counselor,
public comment that
MBA.
Elisa, you wanted to read.
Thank
Is
you
that
for
correct?
acting swiftly
Yes.
and wisely and shutting down video lottery terminals at the onset of the COVID-19 cautionary measures. I have the utmost respect for how Director Pack and your team handled that period of time. The following public comment was sincerely hope you are all well. This last month has tragically helped to make the point. Experts and advocates like myself have been consistently trying to shine a light on the fact that publicly operated gambling is an unstable, unsustainable form of revenue. Maybe voters and legislators will take notice now. What I fear, however, is that the focus will turn to charging the lottery with recouping the shortfall of approximately $20 million per week during the closures. It is going to put you in a terribly difficult place. Please let us know how we can be of assistance in backing you up on the following facts and/or bringing about the suggested action items. Publicly operated gambling is a regressive tax on our vulnerable residents. Now these individuals are particularly struggling with co-occurring disorders and mental health challenges, which are exacerbated by the current state of financial insecurity. They are our honored citizens and they need our protection and help right now, not targeted. As was realized in the 2009 recession, creating an infrastructure of gambling treatment providers that is dismantled at the first signs of fiscal difficulties is nonsensical. A threshold number was legally established out of the 2011 budget that treatment and prevention funding must not fall below. Please let our specially trained workforce be available to treat people who are suffering when they need it most. In the same respect, this is the time to do research and gather extremely unique data that is unprecedented. We know that your team believes in good science. Advocates and experts want to partner with you in gathering and utilizing it for the public good. Please don't miss this opportunity. One example, requests for treatment referrals from the 877 MyLimit hotline have quite nearly stopped entirely. We need to look at what that says about the correlation between VLTs and addiction. How is that data being captured and interpreted? Is there still a belief that illegal online cryptocurrency gambling sites are capturing a significant percentage of your gambling market share? Clearly, a percentage of VLT revenues, once the machines are on again, will be bankrolled by stimulus checks. That money is intended to be infused into our local economy better than that, especially allowing small businesses to get back on their feet. One national advocacy group is calling for a 30-day moratorium on the ability to gamble after stimulus checks are distributed. It's certainly extreme, though perhaps worth looking at the math. Your marketing efforts should specifically address individuals with gambling disorders who have not been able to play VLTs for an extended period of time. There should be commercials that applaud the people who have now achieved a few months of gambling abstinence and encourage them to seek out professional support to keep up their amazing progress in recovery. You've always said that you want a lot of people to play a little. This is the time to back that ideal up with a marketing platform that seeks to protect vulnerable players and truly appeals to a wide-reaching audience. I would be honored to offer my own feedback and opinions of the folks in gambling recovery who I work with about your campaigns and the impact they have on us. Thank you for allowing me to submit this letter into your meeting record. Be well.
Thank you, Lisa. And I know that I speak for the commission in thanking Ms. Marks for her submission on the public comment. As everyone knows, this is not the time that we respond or address public comments, but we do receive them. I also know that the commission is taking these comments and very seriously working with the responsible gaming community, of which Ms. Marks is a party. And so I just want to thank you again for providing that for us. With that, I think we should move to the Commission and Director Communications. And I'll just open that up for anyone who has a comment. And I also think we're going to be hearing from Commissioner Valdivia at this time.
All right, so am I up? No other comments?
I don't hear any. Barry, do you have any that before we start there? Do we just want to move to Raul?
Why don't we let Commissioner Valdivia give his report, and then I'll make some comments afterwards.
That's fine. You're on.
Yes, this morning we had our audit committee meeting, and I just want to point out some highlights that were presented. One was the impact of what's going on with COVID-19 and the internal self-assessment or peer review that is due to happen in the near future. They're having to change how they're going to do this, and the possibility is that if you're, just to remind you that outside auditors from different states come in and perform that review, but that is probably not going to happen. What they're looking at is doing a self-assessment and then providing that information to one of those auditors electronically, and then them reviewing it and asking questions of the internal audit staff regarding the assessment. So that's going to be a little different this year. We also were updated on the open audit recommendations that the department has submitted to lottery management. And there are just 5 that are open. They're all medium risk. And Robert made a comment that management has been proactive in all the audit recommendations and these that they are pursuing to close. There's a couple of audits that are in process. One is cybersecurity risk assessment, basically looking at foundational controls. The update showed that the compliance guidelines have 88 requirements under those controls, and Lottery has met 66 of them, I mean verbatim as to how they're written in the guidelines. The remaining ones are they're not, Lottery is not out of compliance, but they have mitigating or better controls in place to meet the standard. So there are no recommendations as a result. It's just that those remaining 22 are being met differently. And the audit staff is confident that this will meet the guidelines. The second one that's in place is the going on right now is the financial viability criteria used to select retailers to participate in Lottery. And because of COVID-19 and what's happening, there's some new considerations that are being looked at this moment. And the things that they've had to consider now is the possibility of retailers not reopening, the length of the video lottery shutdown. We've had to delay new VLTs, the orders of that. So games and that type of thing, and just the innovations that we were looking for will be delayed. And then supporting the new and existing retailers, the ones that either come on board new or make it through and don't shut down permanently, and see how we can support them. So they're kind of having to shift this a little bit, and there'll be a further update on that. But besides that, that's all I have for the audit committee report.
Thanks, Commissioner Valdivia. Questions or comments from the commission overall before we move to Barry? Rel, do you feel like you identified that we'd have a few open matters still that are all medium risk? Given COVID-19, do you feel as though these are going to be adequately or able to be addressed, even if there's a delay in addressing them, or do we have any fears that things that are medium risk escalate due to COVID-19?
No, that fear, that was never, I never sensed that, and that was not mentioned. And the reason that I'm confident that these recommendations will be addressed, it's the fact that management is working closely with the audit department. They are aware of these recommendations. They haven't changed. So if anything that might happen, it might be a delay, and I don't believe those delays would cause any harm to Lottery.
Great.
In that respect, but just the fact that management is on top of it and looking at them and not disregarding them gives me confidence that they'll be met.
Thank you. Great. If there are no questions and comments of Commissioner Valdivia, how about Barry, you have some comments you'd like to make?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We don't have a formal director's report on the agenda, but there are a few points I'd like to bring to the attention of the commission. First, sort of housekeeping, we will continue to be holding commission meetings by telephone for the foreseeable future to ensure physical distancing and protect the health and safety of Lottery employees, the commission, and the public. As we've noted, the telephone format does not lend itself well to public comment, so we are encouraging parties to submit written comments to be summarized into the record and distributed to the commission. We're also, of course, continuing our proactive engagement with stakeholders in the treatment, prevention, and advocacy communities and among our retail partners. Second, we have a lot of staff who are reaching significant milestones in their careers with the lotteries that we would normally recognize during an in-person commission meeting, we're going to hold off until we decide it's okay for the commission to meet in person again, or until the list gets so long that I'm going to sound like a college graduation MC reading them all out, at which point we will recognize folks on the phone. Later on in the agenda, you will hear a depressing report out on our financial statements, which should come as no surprise. I just want to say for the record that Lottery's executive team is closely monitoring our expenditures and revenues and are proactively managing our cash position through what I call the critical period, which is essentially now through the fall of 2020, based on Analytics and Insights worst case scenario forecast, which I've shared with you. As we learn more about the severity of our financial position and the likelihood of a slow reopening of Oregon's economy, I'll keep you apprised of any additional measures we may take. At the May Commission meeting, Kathy Ortega and I will update you on the status of fiscal year 20 budget development, and I would just say, suffice it to say, that situation is fluid. I am consulting with the governor's office on potential scenarios to reopen Oregon's economy and the potential impact that might have to lottery retailers and revenue. Those discussions are preliminary, and I do not have anything to report today other than those discussions have begun. We're also looking at maximizing the profits of the parts of our product portfolio that remain active, and you will hear more about that during staff updates later in the agenda. And finally, I just want to report on the results of a pulse check-in we did with all lottery employees recently. We wanted to gauge the extent to which employees felt that leadership was meeting their needs during the coronavirus pandemic using survey questions developed by the Gallup organization so we could have a national benchmark to compare ourselves against. Lottery's Analytics and Insights team programmed the survey and sent an invitation to Lottery's 479 employees on April 9th. The survey was open from April 9 to April 13. 351 Lottery employees participated for an overall response rate of 73%, which is fantastic. The high-level takeaway is most Lottery employees agree the Lottery cares for their well-being, keeps them informed, that they are well prepared to do their jobs, and that leadership has communicated a clear plan of action in response to the coronavirus. And we received significantly more positive feedback on these questions than the national average. This sentiment is certainly not universal, and there are parts of the organization that feel differently, and we've shared that information with the appropriate leaders so they can reach out to staff and see what we can do to improve. Overall, though, I was pleased with the results, and I'm happy that through all this chaos and confusion, we are doing a good job leading the organization through the crisis while recognizing there's always room for improvement. If you're interested in more detailed results, I'm happy to share the aggregated responses. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions from the Commission.
Thanks, Barry. Questions or comments from the Commission for Director Pack on his report? Barry, I would like to say that I want to commend you and your team. I have felt, similar to your survey, that you have been very proactive in answering my questions when I've had them and getting information that I think the Commission needs out. I know that this is a really difficult time for everybody, and frankly, you think you've answered a few questions and 3 days later there are new questions to be answered. So I know that. But I do appreciate the leadership role you've all taken on that. I'm glad that your employees are feeling similarly.
Thank you.
So unless there are other questions or comments, we'll move to the minutes. The minutes of the previous Commission meeting have been circulated to the Commission. If there are no changes in the minutes, is there a motion to approve?
I move that the minutes of the Oregon State Lottery Commission meeting held on March 20th, 2020 be approved as final as presented today.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer,
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Aye.
Chair Safoff.
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. With that, maybe Ms. Ortega, Kathy, you want to start on the financial report?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Safoff, Commissioners, Director Pack. For the record, my name is Kathy Ortega, Chief Financial Officer for the Oregon Lottery. And today I'd like to go over with you our financial report for March and the period ending March 2020. If you would take a look at your first page on the financial report, which is the monthly operating report, not surprisingly, our revenues are down from the original or for our forecasted budget by 46.8 million, which is a direct result of the shutdown of bars and taverns and the video product revenue stream impact of those actions. We have one negative variance from the month on the salaries and benefits line, and that isn't so much a spending variance as it is the need to correct some of our accruals for benefit expenses that needed to be shored up on a year-to-date basis and correct for some system issues that we had. We're still positive, as you will see on the next statement, on a year-to-date basis. We also were down on the net profit line, almost $29 million. And going to the next page, we have a $45.4 million revenue variance. And we are still above budget on spending. I believe that trend, I think, will reverse itself in the coming months. So I wouldn't take too much stock into that. I have services and supplies scheduled there for you to take a look at today. And I also have the balance sheet there for you to take a look at today. As is the case as what I've done in the past, I have at the end of the quarter, I have our capital spending report, and you'll see down at the bottom, on the totals, we've spent about $6.9 million of our original $57 million budget, and are significantly underspent to the tune of about almost $50 million. And some of that underspending is what will carry forward and go into some of the planning that we're doing on our cash. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on the March monthly report today, if you have any.
Kathy, this is Chris. I do have a question on the March that was down 46 plus million. Question I have on March was, remind us again, when in March was the shutdown ordered for bars and restaurants?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Telfer. I was looking that up right before this meeting, and Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it the 24th of March?
No, it was earlier than that.
It was earlier?
The governor's executive order was issued on the 17th of March.
And then it was effective a couple days later, right?
Mhm.
No, we turned the VLTs off on March 17th.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So Kathy, obviously April's going to look even worse because we have a whole month of shutdown of the machines. And we don't know what's going to happen in May, and June. So when you said that you thought this net income year to date would reverse itself in the future, can you define future?
Oh, for clarification, what I meant when I said that was that the favorable, I can't define that. And I was just referring to some of the positive spending trends that we've seen against budget will continue, and that's part of our cash planning. If I misspoke,
Oh,
I
great.
apologize, but
No, you didn't misspeak. I was just wondering if it was, based on revenue, and obviously it's not going to be based on revenue. It's going to be based on our expenditures. So that's very helpful. Appreciate it. Thank you, Kathy.
So along with the question about expenditures and a go forward, I know that we talked about this once before. I just want to see whether or not how we're doing on this part of it. On the CapEx spend, I know in a situation like this, everybody has to evaluate what capital they expend in terms of the business. However, I think I'll try to cut to the chase here. Cutting back on CapEx, it only works if what you're cutting back on doesn't hinder you from coming back as a business when you need to come back. So I'm assuming the underspend and what we're doing in maintaining the business, we're keeping in mind what we need to continue spending so that when the market comes back, we are ready to go, or we can easily phase into coming back. Is that how we're approaching?
yes.
Yeah, but
Go ahead, Barry.
yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. Yeah, Chair Safloff, we have two primary goals right now that are guiding our decision making around expenditures. First is the preservation of cash, and the second is making sure that we're positioned for a strong re-entry to the market. So sometimes those can be counter, and we are making decisions on an individual basis, but we are continuing to invest in some of the new terminals from the field trial, for instance, so that we can get some of the older terminals out of the market and continue to be in a strong position for revenue generation long term. We're continuing the project to upgrade both the Aurora system and the intelligence system, again, because those bring revenue generating potential for our retailers in the lottery in the future.
Great, thank you. Other questions or comments on the financials for Kathy?
Yes, I do. This is Commissioner Valdivia. Kathy, I'm looking at the month ended March statement and the 46 million variance. That's obviously what we didn't get compared to the budget. If usually we see a positive variance there, can you tell me how much more we did not receive besides the 46?
Can you repeat? I didn't get that last part of the question. Could you please repeat it, Commissioner?
Sure. The 46 million there shows that what we didn't get, which would bring us to basically zero variance. But usually we see a positive variance. And so is it possible to know what we didn't get above the 46 million?
I don't have specific figures at my fingertips right now. I can get back to you, but just an anecdotal comment. Mm-hmm. This is mostly in the video area, right. And March and April are typically our strongest months of the year, where we are beating forecast and prior year numbers. And I can go back and get you a specific number.
Yeah, I don't know if I really need a specific number. I just want to know that if I'm thinking this through correctly, is that we did not get. There's more than 46 million that we did not get in March.
That's correct, because technically we beat the forecast.
Right. Right, that's what I'm getting. That usually happens. And so there's an amount there also that didn't come in. And we're talking just 2 weeks here, correct? Of
Correct.
shutdown.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And so I can go back and do a little research for you. And if it was, normally we're ahead of forecast, not prior year, by 2 or 3%, I can get you, we fell short of budget by this month, and normally we beat it by this much.
Right, yeah. That would be good. Yeah, there's no harm in that, but yeah, that would be good to know, because I just, because we're seeing 46 million, but it's most likely more than that.
Right, and March and April are typically our best months of the year, unfortunately.
Right, okay, thank you, Kathy.
Well, some of that will turn up in the forecast that you have prepared and will continue to be preparing for us, I would assume. Adjustments to the forecast.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else on the financials for Kathy?
I had a question on the indirect expense for video. Why is it so much higher than last year? I can understand why the direct expenses are less, but the indirect expense for the month ended March, it's about $1.5 million more. I'm just wondering why.
Okay, off the top of my head, but largely in the video, it's in the allocation, and we had those correcting entries coming through. Because as you can see, we were negative by about 663,000 on the salaries and benefits line, which then in turn, the biggest share of the revenue gets allocated the biggest share of that expense, which won't be the case as we go forward in the video revenue goes away.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the monthly financial statements?
I move that the Oregon State Lottery financial statements for months ended March 31st, 2020 be approved for the record as presented today.
Do I hear a second? Thank you. Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Satthoff?
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. Kathy, anything more from you?
No, that's all I have for you today.
All right. Thank you. I think that next on the agenda, we're going to hear from Ms. Scaro. Chris, are you available on rulemaking?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Pack, for the record, my name is Chris Scaro, and I'm the Rules and Policy Analyst for the Lottery. On your agenda today, the Commission will consider permanent adoption of 2 rules relating to the casino and concentration prohibitions, and those are OAR 177-040, 0017, and 177-045-0030. I've discussed these at previous commission meetings, and you have more information in the meeting materials, but for the record, let me briefly explain the purposes of this rulemaking. First, we ensure the legal validity of OAR 177-040-0017. There's some question about whether we properly filed all the paperwork many years back. So we are asking the Commission to re-adopt the rule to remove any doubt about whether this is a valid rule. While we're updating it, we're also making sure it reflects current practice with respect to the casino prohibition. So the rule commits to the casino prohibition, which is nothing new, of course, but we also explain how the casino prohibition is enforced in the early stages of the video lottery retailer application process. So specifically for those applicants about whom the lottery has casino prohibition concerns, we could impose some additional requirements before we place VLTs in the business, such as a period of continuous business operation or additional documentation and explanation about the applicant's business plans beyond just selling video lottery products. This is all fairly consistent with our current practice and just puts clarity in our rule. And lastly, we make some updates with respect to the concentration prohibition. So we delete the section of our rule that gives us discretion over the effective date of the concentration prohibition, and that just means it's effective now and going forward. So that's not necessarily new, but we won't be able to waive that in the future. Second, we explained that if there's an area in Oregon that's at risk for having a concentration, we will manage the application process accordingly to avoid creating a concentration of video retailers. And then lastly, we say that in the event of a concentration in the future, we will resolve it on a last in, first out basis, which gives some preference to our longer standing retailers, which we thought was the fairest way to resolve a concentration. So in your materials today, you and our audience can see a final rulemaking report that explains that we filed notice in early March. We had a 5-week written comment period. We also held a public hearing in person and of course over Zoom, but Lottery did not receive any comments on these rules for you to consider. You will also find the final rule text showing all changes we are proposing. The director has reviewed the rules and recommends that they be adopted as reflected in your materials today to take effect on May 1st of 2020. And that's all I've got on these, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, you have a motion in your materials.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions or comments from the commission on these rules? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the proposed rulemaking?
I move that OAR 177-040-0017 and 177-045-0030 be amended as presented in the meeting materials today to be effective May 1st, 2020.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer?
Aye.
Commissioner Valdivia?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Aye.
Chair Safoff?
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And now we'll move to staff updates. And there's a number of you speaking. So I suspect that you have an order you're going to go in. Just be sure you tell us who's speaking before we start.
Yes, this is Chair Sadoff, and Director Pat, Commissioners. This is Kathy Stromberg, the Corporate Affairs Officer at the Oregon Lottery. And I have a number of team members on the call today: Tina, Lindsay, Carrie, Stacy, Shad, Spencer. Could each of you introduce yourselves?
Chair, Commissioners, Director Pack, for the record, my name is Tina Erickson and I am the Lottery Product Portfolio Manager.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Lindsay Peterson. I'm the manager of the Gaming Products Portfolio.
And that I'm having a hard time hearing that last person. You may need to speak up.
Sorry, can you hear me better now?
I can, thank you.
Okay, apologies. Good morning. For the record, my name is Lindsay Peterson. I am the manager for the Gaming Products Portfolio.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Director Pack. For the record, my name is Carrie Hemphill. I am the Sports Betting Product Manager.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Director Pack. For the record, This is Stacy Shaw, Senior Manager, Product Marketing.
Okay.
Morning. For the record, this is Shad Barnes, Senior Manager, Digital Marketing.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Director Pack. For the record, my name is Spencer Haley, Supervisor of Market Intelligence.
Okay, thank you, team. So we're going to give you an update and walk you through the product portfolio this morning and give you kind of an update on each of them and what's been happening, as well as some of the strategies that Director Pack talked about that we're trying to balance between having shutdowns on products as well as trying to figure out new ways of generating revenue. As well, we'll give you an update on our marketing activities and what we've done since the changes from the last commission meeting and what you can expect moving forward. Tina, would you like to start out?
Yes, please. So here we go. Thank you, Kathy. I wanted to talk this morning about Scratch-Its to begin with. And as you can see, sales and transfers are down compared to forecast, as we assumed would happen. Right now, sales are increasing at our convenience and gas stations, while grocery sales have remained similar to last year's levels. And what we're seeing there is for convenience, sales are up about 29% and gas station is up about 26%, while grocery is up at 2%. We also, during this time of COVID-19, have some limited menu retailers who are returning games due to the temporary closure of their business. Right now, we are monitoring that activity and any impact to the sales on Scratch that may result from this. The last bullet, you will see COVID-19 supply chain interruptions. We have not had any interruptions in terms of production for our Scratch games, but it has impacted the Aurora project. And right now we are in the process of developing some scenarios and figuring out options for when equipment delivery and installations will be available once supply chains are back. As a reminder, Aurora, we signed that agreement in October. So equipment will be coming in batches, probably in July, August, and maybe later timeframes. Are there any questions about how Scratch is performing? Okay, Kathy, next slide, please. This is Keno. Again, sales down, and the biggest impact is going to be because of the 60% revenue loss due to our on-premise closures. We are seeing a slight increase at convenience and gas stations, but we don't anticipate that increase to offset any of the on-premise location closures. Any questions for this particular slide? All right. So the last one is jackpot games, which include Powerball, Mega Millions, and Oregon's Game Megabucks. Powerball and Mega Millions groups have changed the jackpot reset level and minimum roll amounts. And previously they were set at 40 million to start. And then Powerball was a $10 million roll, while Mega Millions was a $5 million roll. Now, based on interest rates and declining sales, those groups will be using those calculations instead of having set amounts. Based on that, we've also looked at our Oregon's Game Megabucks and determined that the jackpot reset level will remain at 1 million, and we've reduced our roll amounts to 100,000. And again, that's due to interest rates as well as sales. One thing to note is our analytics and insights team feel that the impact of COVID-19 and the economy is going to likely affect major jackpot games with a 20 to 30% decrease. So further analysis is going to be done on modeling sales and jackpot size to determine really what the impact from these reductions in the roll amounts and resets is going to be. Any questions?
A couple of questions on that. The national 20 to 30% decrease, is that, I'm trying to recall, I thought we were maybe using a slightly larger forecast adjustment than 30%. Am I wrong? Are we also thinking internally, generally it will be 30%?
That's what our analytics and insight team is feeling, just based on information that they're looking at, but that's why they want to continue to do a further analysis on it.
Okay. And then this is probably not a question for right now, but overall, and it may be something as a follow-up question. I'm assuming that Barry, you and or your team are kind of closely looking at how this is working in other states, both in how they're adjusting, how they're dealing with the loss in revenues and plans for going forward, just so that we have an understanding about nationally how this is working. I assume, my guess would be that we're probably ahead of the pack on a lot of that, no pun intended. But do we have means where we're sort of looking out at the other states and getting lessons learned there as well?
Yes.
Yeah, we are. I would say that it's always important to keep in mind that our business model is very different from most other U.S. lotteries. So the lessons being learned are limited. We always learn more from our friends in Canada. Yeah. And I know that Lindsay's been and the product team have been working with the Canadian jurisdictions to understand some of the steps they're taking to manage through this. As it relates to the jackpot games in specific, just as a reminder, these are governed by all of the participating states. So we were all part of the discussions leading up to the decision to lower the initial guaranteed jackpot and the rolls.
Right.
And that was really very carefully based on data and analysis from Muscle, looking at the annuity rates and cash coming in from sales to make sure that we would not get into a situation where we had large unfunded jackpots being won in the future because of the annuity costs and lower sales.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, Lindsay?
Good morning. Just doing a quick check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So video lottery. Obviously, we took a sales hit. We were marching towards $1 billion this fiscal year, but as stated earlier, on March 17th, we disabled all of our video lottery terminals across the state. So forecasts and things like that will be heavily revised, and you'll see different numbers, I would imagine, in the near future. Some updates around what we're doing during this time. We are working through alternate scenarios and roadmap revisions. This was also mentioned earlier. For our projects, we're looking at timelines and budgets, resources, and retailer impacts related to VLT procurements. We are moving forward with purchasing the field trial terminals. There's 300 of them that are currently in the field, but we're delaying commitment to any orders beyond that at this time. When it is time to pick that back up, we will look at retail business changes and potentially redistribute some inventory that may become available and reduce our overall order at that time. So we have some flexibility there. From a game refresh perspective, normally we're actively managing content in the field. We do have new games sitting in the market. We completed a download for our spring content refresh. So those will be available when business does resume. There will be some new things for players. But we are delaying our commitments to new projects at this time. We do have a library of games. We've talked about this in the past that we can draw from, so it shouldn't hurt our strategy going forward, but it will help with some cash flow things in the short term. From a system perspective, we're continuing with our baseline 8 upgrade development as planned. Barry mentioned that earlier. We still intend to go live late this calendar year, on track. And then we're also looking at our options to potentially start some work on requirements and things for those future value adds that will bring more revenue going forward. We do have some work happening in the field, even though establishments are closed. We're doing some VLT moves as requested by retailers. Some retailers are remodeling, some want to space out their VLTs for when they reopen. So we're doing that work as retailers request it. And we're also working with our retailers to keep VLTs powered on so that we can appropriately monitor the assets. Some retailers' inclination was to turn them off, and we would rather have them on and just disabled. So we've been working with retailers on that front. And then we also swapped out some older version field trial terminals for the newer version that we're actually purchasing. So some work is continuing, a lot of planning and roadmap revisions, but no sales. Any questions?
Okay, let's move on to scoreboard then.
All right, good morning. Before getting into the scoreboard product update, I'd like to acknowledge an incident that happened at the end of March. As you likely read in the news, the platform that powers scoreboard was pulled offline on March 27th by SBTech as a precautionary measure in response to a cyber attack. That shut down play on scoreboard and other sportsbook across the globe running on the SBTech platform. SBTech worked quickly with third-party cybersecurity experts to ensure its platform was available and secure for play, and that player data and funds were not disclosed or extracted. We, Lottery, monitored their progress. And once we were confident that players could access it safely and securely, we opened Scoreboard up for play, which was on April 2nd. So to summarize, Scoreboard was offline about 5.5 days from 3/27 to 4/2. In terms of revenue implications, based on when the incident occurred and the lack of sporting events available due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's fair to assume Scoreboard lost about $715,000 in handle and $55,000 in GGR over the outage. With that said, there is no indication that we've seen less daily users because of the outage. Any decline in users seems to be more explained by the availability of events getting settled, and quick regression shows no significance in pre or post outage. And in response to the downtime, SBTech has provided a 20% credit off access fees for the month of March, in addition to a 22.58% credit off the March monthly managed services fee. These credits more than compensate for the projected revenue loss following the incident. And as of April 2nd, Scoreboard returned to normal operation with full availability on mobile and web. So with that, I would like to move to the Scoreboard product update here. And on this slide, you will see the snapshot of monthly performance. With nearly all popular professional sporting events on hold due to the COVID-19 pandemic, average markets available for wagering through Scoreboard dwindled from over 1,200 a day down to less than 400. Scoreboard players are searching for betting options. One of the popular available options within the current state has been table tennis. This non-standard sport has helped us secure an 8.5% margin in Q3, leading to GGR nearly hitting the Q3 forecast despite the lower than anticipated turnover. Wagering options within table tennis include pre-match and live events. Those play options plus the sheer number of matches available currently make it the most wagered sport on the platform. At the time of putting this presentation together, table tennis held 74% of bets in April, 77% of turnover, and 71% of active bettors. No other sport even comes close, even the available soccer, which has only been 20% of bets and 14% of turnover. So what that brings us to is the question of what do we do now? May I have the next slide, please? With limited standard sport opportunities currently to feature, and a goal of keeping existing customers engaged while finding opportunities to expand new player segments, we have recently accelerated efforts to research new potential options and enhance the portfolio. We have always planned on evaluating new options to introduce to the sport library, but the lack of live sport events has accelerated this research. We are actively evaluating new sports daily. This doesn't mean that we will accept all offers that are presented. Some will come through the gate and others will not. This slide shows you some of the questions that we asked during our evaluation, such as questions around integrity monitoring. Are the players professional? Is there a governing body? How much are the players paid? Is there risk? Is it a common market found in the US and other sports books? So to give you some examples of some recent decisions that we've made, we approved new wager opportunities within the sports of bandy, darts, table tennis as mentioned, sumo wrestling, lawn bowls, and the Taiwan Chinese Professional Baseball League. Some recent options we chose to decline at this time have been Oscars and wagers focused around food and weather. Next slide, please. So here's one example of a new feature that we are actively gearing up for the launch of Scoreboard, virtual sports. First, what is it? Virtual sports is a simulated version of real sporting events. These events appear in the standard sports book with a new event starting approximately every 3 minutes. The wagering results are based on a random computer-generated set of odds and outcomes. The motion graphics, as you can see in these pictures, sounds included, play-by-play, and overall experience are lifelike and create familiar moments that players enjoy. A few examples of options that we are looking to add are horse racing, soccer, and greyhound racing. As we are currently doing with all of our potential sport options, we passed virtual sports through our evaluation process. Virtual sports has always been on the roadmap for Scoreboard as a feature we intended to enable later. Our existing system can accommodate this new game type, and through our evaluation, we have deemed it appropriate for introduction. Current circumstances, such as the lack of available sporting events, has made it prudent to move up the roadmap and try to capture additional revenue immediately. By offering virtual sports, we hope to drive more traffic to Scoreboard and fill the gap until live sports return. And next slide, please. Next, I'd like to give you one option of a new market that we are considering for Scoreboard that is currently in the evaluation process. Esports is a professional video gaming where players or teams compete in tournaments for cash prizes. It is growing in popularity, having audience numbers and prize pools that are comparable to major sporting events. Initially, we chose not to launch esports in the Scoreboard library. At the time, we had believed that these events were not widely offered in the US, and we didn't fully understand what went into the sport, including information around player ages or regulation. But since then, we've brought it back for reevaluation and have made some discoveries that I want to share here. Esports is not what we originally thought. The audience median age is 26 years old. Player ages are regulated. They must be at least 16 with an average of 23. Only 6% of the players are 18 or younger. This is in line with similar age restrictions held by major sport leagues that we currently offer on Scoreboard. In addition, we discovered through our research that esports does follow regulation guidelines. There is a code of ethics. They have heavy penalties for cheating. There are anti-doping policies and testing practices, and they have similar data and integrity services to the NFL, the NBA, and other professional leagues. And players within some of the esports competitions that we are evaluating are paid professionals, and those competitions are being broadcast on well-known stations like ESPN. Next slide, please. So we are still in the evaluation process when it comes to esports for this potential new feature. We acknowledge that esports does represent an opportunity for lottery to relatively quickly expand its scoreboard offering to include a new, highly popular form of wagering, and that this opportunity is in a regulated and age-controlled environment. That said, we are currently outlining requirements and are having discussions around the evaluation, such as the requirement to only offer regulated leagues where responsible gambling rules were enforced. We are continuously watching the growth of popularity within the mainstream market, which has included adoption of approved esport wagering in states such as Pennsylvania and Nevada, and is currently under review in other states such as New Jersey, Mississippi, Colorado, and Indiana. So in closing on esports, although we have learned all these new insights, our current recommendation is to monitor the offering and evaluate appropriate timing for engaging with the esports. Next slide, please. But I would like to merge the two ideas and bring up a recently approved addition to Scoreboard, simulated motor racing, specifically around NASCAR and IndyCar via the iRacing channel. So with actual motor racing on hold, the industry has turned to virtual racing events. We followed a similar evaluation process and approved this addition for Scoreboard, currently limiting it to only two specific markets, the NASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series and the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. Both of these are governed by their live racing organization integrity policies. What makes this different from what was previously mentioned markets is that NASCAR and eNASCAR and eIndyCar events are live streamed. They're not pre-recorded. Therefore, there is lower risk of leaked footage of information. The races are on a fixed setup, meaning all the drivers are playing on an equal playing field, and the live driver skill, along with their sim racing experience, is a measure of success. They include actual professional race car drivers, such as Dale Jr., Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch. Though all of those are not new to simulation racing, these drivers have used this tool for years in preparation of actual races, and the industry has now currently successfully adapted the virtual racing into it to use within this current environment. So with this launch of adding it to Scoreboard and this new market opportunity, we are interested in the cross-play appeal. The digital simulation provides a similar concept to virtual sports, but with an outcome based on a live race, not an RNG. And we're also allows us to dabble into the quote e-space and test the waters before fully jumping in. If you're interested in checking out these two races for NASCAR and IndyCar are this weekend on popular stations, NBC Sports and Fox Sports. And finally, next slide, please. I would like to bring you up to speed on our retail strategy for sports. So currently our lottery team is researching the role kiosks might play in the retail strategy. We have received a test kiosk at OSL to play with, which will help the internal team learn about the user experience that bettors and retailers may have as they engage with both the hardware and the software. This puts us in a better position to work on requirements and helps us collect information while our retailers are closed so that we can engage and them thoughtfully when they reopen. Next slide, please. And in the next few weeks, the product team will continue our research of learning about the solution. In the future, we will hold a formal kickoff, including a discussion around trial and field test at a later date. And that closes my sports update. Any questions?
Questions, comments from the commission? I have a couple. If you go back to obviously what you're looking at is with the impact of closing down certain locations, how fast can we move to a more mobile platform through sports betting? So I'm curious on all of these options you're looking at, and how fast can you move to those games, those new sports betting games, safely and reliably with the platform we've got? How fast can any of that be done?
Pretty quickly. So right now, with virtual sports, that was already within the product roadmap. We had just not turned it on. At the moment, we do have the next step for virtual would be the movement to product testing and just certifying with GLI the certification of the RNG and confirmation of end-to-end testing, just to make sure we're comfortable before we launch. So we're looking at that. We're currently in the process and would like to get that stood up in the next couple months as quick as we can, as soon as we can get things certified. In regards to the esports, that's a new product offering. They do offer certain competitions currently within the scoreboard platform, and it would be more of just turning it on if we were comfortable in doing so. With that said, we are still researching it and want to make sure lottery is comfortable with the offering. So we have to do our own due diligence on each individual competition before we're comfortable turning it on. But it is available if we choose to do that.
So even even with the games that we're comfortable with now, it sounds like they would not be up and running before August.
In regards to esports, or just in general?
I'm talking about the new games that you're suggesting on, I think on the esports. Going back, hang on here. You talked about the virtual sports, the esports, and I'm asking any of that, how fast, and it sounds like even as fast, the ones that you are done looking at, whether they are right for us, how fast could they be up and running to help fill the gap here?
Oh, sure. So we just in general on any kind of new sports that are offered, for example, like the bandy and the darts and the sumo wrestling, all of those that are within the standard platform, we are asked daily about new offers. And those we can check within an hour or two to go through our say integrity standards and all that to make sure they are accessible. And if they are, that can get added within a day.
Okay.
So standard new sports that may not be your American, baseball, basketball, but anything else are pretty swift in the adoption of it.
All right, thanks.
As far as virtual sports, we have to confirm a few of the certifications first. And once we do that, so that's what's going to take about a month or two to get that confirmation approved.
So just, this is Kathy Stromberg, just to be clear, virtual sports, we think we can start getting up in around 4 to 5 weeks. There may be other offers as we expand that may take a little longer because of testing and other things we have to get certification on. So, they run, think of it in terms of probably 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay. So, Kathy, you caught my drift here that I know that you will all make sure that anything we offer, we're comfortable with, we feel it's safe, reliable, it meets all of our needs. But what, from the commission's point of view, what we're looking at is, can this help fill the gap, and how fast then could it help fill the gap for the state? And so that was helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. We're running kind of late here, but let's get to the product marketing and marketing side. Stacy?
Yes, good morning. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing in response to our current situation. And I'm going to talk, Shad and I are both going to share this with you. we're not going to talk solely about budget reductions, but we're also going to talk about how we show up in the marketplace, and to Chair Sathoff's point, how we emerge and show up when things start to pick up. So to begin, talk a little bit about budget reductions and deferrals. So we've already put into place budget reductions for Q4, which takes us through the end of the fiscal year in June, and then starting to look at the reductions for Q1 based on the dramatic revenue decrease. We are deferring spending to align with resumption of business. I don't have to tell anybody on this call that we're not really sure when all of that's going to happen, but some of the things that we're looking at as we define our marketing spend is obviously the reopening of bars and restaurants, but things like our major sports are currently, they're not even talking about what they're going to do to resume the season until May, particularly the NBA and MLS, two very big sports here in Oregon. We also have things that we might not think about. The state parks closed and initially talked about reopening May 8th. That is clearly unlikely. And there was a state parks day that we support quite a lot in the past, and we don't know when that will be rescheduled or if it will be. We also deferred some spending really to be able to reframe how we show up, how we message, so that we make sure we're not, and I'm air quoting, tone deaf, and that we're empathetic, and that customers see us as being sensitive and providing support as the marketplace adjusts. So we will look in the future to really think about how we're showing up, what we're saying, so that people understand, we're in this together, but they also understand that Oregon Lottery is an essential component to economic recovery for Oregon. And like everybody else, we evaluate this virtually every day.
So, kind of alluding, dovetailing on what Stacy just kind of mentioned, we currently are engaging in kind of maximizing engagement in our own digital channels and low-cost digital advertising, and we'll have some samples of that a little bit further here in the presentation. But really, it's the things that we control that are low or no cost in terms of communicating out to Oregonians. So, amongst those things are sharing on our online sales channel with updates, information on limited sports. Carrie gave you guys a nice overview of what those are, but currently we're in the middle of the NFL draft today, and we've kind of pointed out some of those fun and unique sports like bandy, table tennis, and other things to interested parties. We are highlighting products and grocery and convenience with a light touch on moments of customer delight. So reminding people to use our lottery to go machines, to add scratch-its when they're in the store stocking up, to support local business retailers, use the mobile app to check tickets, all with an undertone of social distancing and security and safety. Be safe at this time. We've altered our focus for some of the problem gambling messaging and advertising to really point out the virtual problem gambling and telehealth style options that are available to folks at this time. And we've been utilizing our social channels to promote community support of retailers, both grocery and convenience, with carryout or gift certificate purchases or other things. And it's been very engaging content thus far, and our players and customers have been really participatory in that. And part of this is just how agile we can be in the marketplace. And so the things I just kind of brought up within sports, there isn't a lot in the sports world to talk about. So some very direct examples of that agility include NFL draft conversation, try new sports, the tease of the upcoming virtual sports that Carrie just gave you guys a nice rundown on, and then some special and free exclusive offers. So with very little in the sports world to kind of focus on, there are still some options and opportunities within that, and we're using free and or low cost ways to message that to people to some success.
We also modified our messaging for responsible and problem gambling outreach, a relevant tone to focus on understanding that people are at home. We have had some good success in putting people on a path to be able to have community support. Community support, very important. GAM Talk, it doesn't direct people right to help, it directs them to a community of people to talk to. We worked with OHA to get messaging about how they were supporting people remotely and focusing on there is telehealth available, both formal help and just chat with people from OHA. And we're focusing on social and digital. That's where people are right now. And I just want to talk just real quickly that we are going to pivot some messaging as things start to come back and more access to gambling will become available. We will talk about what Kitty Martz mentioned, and we've already started to work on it, about keeping the gains you've made while access has been cut off, so that you can use help to keep you on the path to recovery that you may have started on during this time. And Chad mentioned, this is something we're really actually very excited about. We did a social contest on Facebook where we encouraged Oregonians to share with us 3 different things so far. The first one was, how did they support retailers in their community? And we really got an unprecedented and overwhelming response, everything from more tipping to doing takeout to wearing a mask. And we got over 1,600 comments on that one, and people shared and engaged past that. We subsequently ran 2 more contests where we talked about, tell us how you're spending your time when you're at home. And most recently, how are you staying in touch with loved ones that you're not able to be with in person? And those have increased. The second one got over 3,000 comments and a lot of good engagement, a lot of good sharing. So it's really bringing the community together. And then the prize is, Scratch It. So providing moments of delight and sharing with the community. And I think, Kathy, that's it.
That's it. Any questions?
Okay. Questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none. Is there anything else on staff updates that you want to present to us or have us consider?
No.
That's it, Madam Chair.
All right. Well, thank you all. There was a lot of information in the staff updates, but it was all good information. Really appreciate it. Unless I hear any other business from the commissioners, and let me pause and say, is there other business any of the commissioners would like to raise at this time? Okay. Having heard none, this concludes today's meeting of the Oregon State Lottery Commission. The next meeting is currently scheduled on May 29th. Please check the Oregon Lottery Commission meeting website as it gets closer to the meeting date for the meeting details. Thank you all for coming, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.